Mike, it is post-election. But we still don't know a lot of the contest, and the results are still out there. And I think even in California, we won't probably know for a couple more days and potentially a couple more weeks, especially like on the Los Angeles mayor's race,
Mhm.
which seems to be tightening up. But let's start off with talking about Fetterman. We talked last time about Fetterman, and we said, could this be the Democrats' real problem that they could have avoided? And I mean, lo and behold, you come on election day and things go in the opposite direction of what the polling was indicated, and Fetterman ended up pulling it off at the end.
He did, and congratulations to him. And I'm not sure what the people of Pennsylvania were thinking, but then again, I'm not in Pennsylvania, so you really can't point fingers when you're sitting here in California. I think you hit a couple of points there. One we should talk about later, which is the fact that we're 3 days after the fact, and place like Arizona, still over 20% of the ballots aren't counted yet. Over 500,000 ballots in Arizona are not counted yet. So that's one subject. But as it relates to Fetterman, I think it was indicative of a bigger picture around the country, which was, polling was terrible on the Republican side. And one thing to understand about polling is usually a snapshot in time. At that point in time, here's what people are thinking, here's where they're voting. But when you take it and you spread it over time, that's when you're looking for trends. You're looking for things that are catching fire. You're looking for things that are moving. And in the case of the Fetterman Oz race, Oz was moving quickly. And in some cases, he was ahead in some of the polls. In all cases, he was neck and neck in the polls. And he ends up losing by 200,000 votes. And we saw the same thing in, New Hampshire. There was thought that they could win the Senate race there. It didn't happen. The governor's race in Michigan, the polls showed that Tudor Dixon, the Republican, was in the race, and everything else, when the votes came in, it was like a 10-point or an 8-point race. So there was a lot of mechanical issues within the structure, the organization, or the operation that led people to believe there was going to be something that didn't end up happening.
Well, and if you look at just the Fetterman race itself, in the summertime, he had an 18-point lead.
Right.
And then you come toward election day, and you're right. There were polling showing that Oz was in the lead by a couple percentage points, and then Oz was down a little bit, and then at the end, it showed him that everything was a neck and neck. And you know, it's amazing how this particular race, how it moved around so much. Especially once he had the stroke. I mean, really, I think the movement became not when he had the stroke, but the debate performance.
Right.
And from that point forward, Oz tried to capitalize as much as possible. But the other thing too that I've read is as to why Oz ended up losing is he just became a caricature for a lot of people in Pennsylvania. You had mentioned this in a conversation we had earlier about all the ads that Bruce Springsteen and Snooki and everyone else
Mm-hmm.
were doing in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, I mean, it was, and to his credit, while he was recovering from, because remember, he had the stroke. Their primary was in May.
Mm.
He had the stroke, I think it was the Friday before the primary. And, Oz won a close primary race for the Senate seat. And what happened after that was Oz basically dropped off the face of the earth, and wasn't doing campaign events, wasn't doing fundraising, wasn't doing any advertising. And so Fetterman obviously was not in any way, shape, or form capable or had the capacity to do anything. And so their campaign went up with these clever 15-second ads with people from New Jersey, talking about he really lives in New Jersey. And I think that, kind of made a difference. But the debate performance, I think, left people somewhat stunned. His performance on stage during the last 2 weeks, I think, left people stunned. And the thing that really needs to be looked at is, again, looking at the polling in terms of trends, all of the exit polls show the same thing. What are the top issues for people? The economy, inflation, and crime. Um, and that's, I think, overall the three big issues for all people. But I think what some political operatives may have missed here is the fact that among certain segments of the voters, there were other particular issues that were maybe not number one, but in terms of priority or intensity, much stronger. The other thing I think in Pennsylvania that you can't overlook is a local issue, which is the fact that Fetterman is ahead, or Oz is behind by a little less than 200,000 votes. The Republican candidate for governor is being blown out by 800,000 votes.
Mhm.
And so, I think that has an impact down ticket to the point where Republicans lost control of the Pennsylvania House for the first time in a state house for the first time in a long time. So I think that was also something that had an impact. But it's one of those things you better have an honest when this kind of election happens, and you have to have an honest assessment of what was right and what was wrong, and figure out what to do to fix what didn't happen, whether it was as a candidate or as a political organization. You better fix that.